respect to building, I'm going to talk a little bit about building character. This idea is relayed frequently, and perhaps sometimes too broadly and a little too generally. So it's fair to ask what this is honestly supposed to mean to us. Maybe our goal as human beings isn't quite to define ourselves, but more specifically, to redefine ourselves. What I'm hinting at here is the possibility that there is an inner conflict between all of us that can be rationally explained and analyzed. That idea of inner conflict can be quite disturbing as well. It continues to raise the question if we are more likely to become unstable or renewed. So are we in fact constantly trying to stray off of a psychological path that is preset in our minds and is persistent to fade? This same conflict is most likely between two concepts, biological determinism and neuroplasticity, really big words. Neuroplasticity is essentially the idea that your brain can change the way it thinks and learns over experience and time. Biological determinism states that our genes determine our behavior and choice-making skills. In other words, biological determinism sets out a path that you have to follow, and neuroplasticity offers the chance to create a new one. Now I'm going to try to unpack and dissect this conflict specifically. First off, it is true that we can combat biological determinism with neuroplasticity, but the thought that we can eliminate any kind of determinism is false, because neuroplasticity, in a way, comes with its own form. Furthermore, the more used neurological connections reinforce, the more unused neurological connections weaken. Now we begin to see a new set path that we create ourselves this time. The brain used to be thought of as a concrete model instead of a clay model that could be changed and molded. We have proven that the concrete model isn't accurate because the mind actively and consistently changes. Since we are now aware that these compounded decisions we make throughout our lives connect to neuroplasticity, new meaning might be brought to the phrase, think before you do. To clarify, neuroplasticity is not good or bad by any definition, but is more like a tool or process that you use every single day. Neuroplasticity can obviously affect how we perceive our surroundings, how our behavior changes, and how our moral code develops. Now, on a separate idea, the common code of morality is a tough concept to tackle. We always ask ourselves, is there even evidence for one? Maybe guilt or regret? And do we even know if there is a common ethical thread woven between all human beings in the first place? If we stop and think about the power of the mind for a moment, research has displayed that the mind can, in the absolute worst cases, train itself to become sick. If the brain has such an extreme power to manipulate itself, what does this mean for how people are influenced regarding the common code of morality? Now, I've identified 4 possible headings which could point us to the origin of individual morality. First is psychological, which asks, do we develop our moral code based on our own personal fears, desires, or perceptions of the world? Spiritual. Do we define our moral code based on divine intervention and the presence of a God or gods? Reactive. We begin to create our moral code based on reactions and responses to specific or cataclysmic events. Intrinsic. Is there a human nature ingrained within all of us calling us to a set number of actions? By stating these 4 headings, I'm not implying that a combination of them cannot be present to yield a moral code, nor am I stating these are the only 4. But at some juncture, no matter what, we have to make a personal decision regarding what we believe is right or wrong. Then, to find out if there is a common code of morality, we have to do one thing as the second step. We have to become more empathetic towards one another. That way, we can begin to understand not only ourselves better, but the human race as well. When thinking about empathy as a whole, I'm brought back to a specific turn of events in 1st grade. When summoned for a fire drill, our class stood outside in an organized line, but continued to chatter among ourselves. And our teacher, I can assure you, did not like chatter. I suppose we simply weren't aware of how important it was to our instructor to look good among her coworkers. She seemed disappointed as we walked back inside, but we assumed this disposition wouldn't evolve into anything else. We were grossly incorrect. As soon as we stepped into the classroom, she slammed the door and then hopelessly broke down crying right in front of us, almost like she was paid to do so. And to make matters worse, our ignorance caused us to shame ourselves and fail to reach out to her. Looking back, the application of empathy in this situation would obviously not only have reinforced the relationship between class and teacher significantly, but it also would have saved us some suppressed pain, since we assumed we were the only problem and failed to consider any other accumulated issues she had experienced throughout her day. Unfortunately, I had no idea the term empathy even existed, but the concept of community was still enforced consistently among us. We practiced a flawed logic, unfortunately. First of all, we weren't inclusive. And second of all, we never actually tested our moral integrity as a group. In other words, if we simply felt unified, we were unified. And that was good enough for us, tragically. But in a broader scope, empathy, in my opinion, is best practiced through one superior medium, giving. I've broken down the types of giving at this point because I feel that we tend to disregard how and why we give as opposed to what we give. The first reason is to receive. This is the lowest order of thinking and involves the anticipation of a reward. It is also the weakest incentive for a relationship because when the person you're giving to doesn't give back, the potential for a friendship crumbles and you walk away. It also later evolves into a type of arrogance, which actually begins to in effect other relationships. In summation, this type of giving is for you. The next is to understand, specifically to respect others' desires to be perceived and viewed in a certain way. Through this method, we could also be trying to enlighten ourselves and create a more efficient working environment. This type of giving is for you and the person you're giving to. The last reason is simply to love. The definition of love, in a sense, can be defined as the amount you would sacrifice for someone else's sake, and someone else's sake only. Within this, the sustainability of a relationship is not dependent on what you receive, which paves the way for a long, healthy friendship. This type of giving is for the person you're giving to. As I leave you all today, my hope is that I've provided an at least semi-clear understanding of how human psychology relates to the concept of morality and how we're going to live together harmoniously. Thank you.